Welcome to the Smart Factory Podcast, brought to you by Catalyst Connection, where every day we work to support manufacturers at the intersection of technology, data, and workforce development, turning today's factories into smart connected enterprise, powering the next generation of American manufacturing. This is the Smart Factory Podcast. But first, a word from our sponsors making this show possible.
In manufacturing, unexpected losses don't ask for permission. A single equipment failure, a liability claim, or a workforce gap can stop production, and your bottom line, cold. Henderson Brothers works with manufacturers who know that real protection goes beyond a policy. From property and workers' comp to cyber coverage and employee benefits, they build solutions around your operation, not a one-size-fits-all checklist. Personal, proactive, present. That's Henderson Brothers. Learn more at hendersonbrothers.com.
In manufacturing, the margin for error is razor thin. The decisions you make about technology, taxes, and operations don't just affect this quarter. They shape the next decade. Schneider Downs brings the deep industry expertise to turn that complexity into confidence. Big thinking, personal focus. At work for your business. Learn more at schneiderdowns.com/manufacturing.
Welcome to the Smart Factory Podcast. In this episode, we'll explore how a Pittsburgh family bakery built on old world techniques since 1926 is using modern digital tools to protect quality, augment their workforce, meet tougher food safety standards, and keep growing, all without losing what makes Mancini's Mancini's. My name is Matt Minner, and today I'm joined by Nick Mancini Hartner of Mancini's Bakery. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah, no, we're very excited to have you on the podcast. Mancini's great friends, longtime collaborators with Catalyst Connection. We're very excited to get a chance to dive into the really unique story that surrounds Mancini's and all the work you all are doing there in McKees Rocks and across your locations.
It's been an amazing journey, and so if you're from Pittsburgh, you're probably familiar with us, and if you're outside of Pittsburgh, which I know this podcast goes pretty far, we are a 100-year-old bread bakery located in McKees Rocks, industrial neighborhood just outside of Pittsburgh, and Catalyst Connections has been a partner to help us along this journey. And so we've gone from a bakery where everything was hand scaled, handmade to on the verge of launching our smart factory in full effect. And so this long journey wouldn't be possible without Catalyst, and I'm happy to share the story today about it.
Well, yeah, let's kind of start at that beginning there. You said, I mean, that's a really exciting milestone, 100 years coming up. So in a family-owned bakery since 1926. So tell us a little, how did Mancini's come to be Mancini's Bakery?
Yeah. So century milestone year for us. My great uncle, James Mancini, founded the bakery in 1926 at a one-room storeroom. He was born in Italy, came to the U.S., moved out of the house at 13, didn't get along with his father, and apprenticed himself to a bakery. And in that time period, he, on the side, developed his own recipe, his own theory, his own belief in bread. And his father, my great-grandfather, saw the ingenuity and industrial nature of James and rented him a one-room storeroom in McKees Rocks, and that's where the bakery was born. And it started, just that really, American dream story of an immigrant working hard, made 100 loaves a night himself, mix it, bake it, ship it, deliver it himself. And the bakery really grew just by multiples, from one to be twice as big, you hire 2 people, and then so on and so on. And then we eventually got to a place where you can only fit 8 people in the room. And that was, kind of like the capacity. We hit our ceiling. That was it. And then along came the next generation. My grandfather was the next generation. I know they're brothers, one familiar generation, but he was about 20 years younger. So great Uncle Jimmy had no kids. My grandfather became his partner and eventually took over. But he had a more business mindset. And my great uncle was definitely the artisan. And he moved the bakery, grew it. They added the second shift. They added some additions to the bakery, kept growing. And then my mom became involved with the bakery, and she raised that first level business to like being a professional business, and she still works and runs the bakery. She amazing story. She just won Southwestern or South so the Western PA Business Person of the Year, and so kudos to her. And she's my mentor, and I get to work with her every day, and I'm the next generation.
That's fantastic. And your mom, Mary Mancini, correct?
Right, correct.
Yep. Yeah. No. So that was very exciting news to hear. Or those accolades are very well deserved. Talking about maybe what's a story that either you heard a lot or any things you experienced at the bakery growing up, or stories you always tell new employees about the early days. Maybe it was for your early days or your the older generations. What sticks out to you?
So many great stories. It's hard to like pull just one out, but I just remember working in the bakery, and it was such a hands-on place, and you had to earn your ability to learn the next thing. So the first couple of years, I worked at the bakery summers, weekends. I was not allowed to touch bread. I was not allowed to cook or bread until the year 2000. So after I graduated college, and so, but that's how serious the mindset was. That like this isn't just a job. It isn't just baking bread. It's a mindset, and the people that worked here, my grandfather, it was almost a religion. Make the bread, the timing, how we did everything, and some of it is when you look back at it, the science mirrors it, and some of it is old wives' tales. You don't need to start on the fifth rack to go up. Things like that, where if I did it wrong, basically got the equivalent of a rap on the wrist. But a lot of things that, essentially matter, and everything has a reason. And sometimes we forget the reasons, but, we sometimes out of superstition, we put things in the right, in orientation on the pan, because that's how we always did it. And, the science of it doesn't matter, but we believe it matters.
And I think that's interesting that what you're talking about, and it just highlights that interesting confluence of the artisan nature of baking, but the very much industrial nature of a larger scale manufacturer or food producer. So maybe enlighten our listeners a little bit. What's it really take from an operational standpoint to run a bakery 24/7 to where, and if I'm remembering, which you'll take orders up until 6 p.m. Is it 6 p.m. the night before to then get picked up or delivered the next morning?
So 100%, we want to, in our growth, it's very important to me that we've kept like the soul and the authenticity of the bread, and these guidelines of what makes a great loaf of bread true, and carry that forward, even though we've grown, and, we've, accepted and incorporated some level of automation and things to help us move forward. Like every loaf is still hand twisted, but can we use a machine to divide that's more accurate, does it more efficiently, doesn't destroy people's wrists? Can we incorporate these things to make us better? And like I said, we want to keep our soul and everything that makes us the best at making bread. Is we believe in freshness. And so the way we've grown is we've kept these values, these things that we have to hold true in order to deliver great product, and has to be fresh. So we take orders until 7 p.m. and that could go on a truck as early as 2 a.m. the next day. And so we've developed everything around that. So everything from, modeling, which is really important, and that we use our own data to figure out what we are going to use tomorrow. And it's not an exact science, but can we get to 80-90% accuracy? Yes. And we use that to push numbers into our production sheet that we don't know yet, right? And so because we take these orders so late, and then it takes around 6 hours to make that product. So we can't make everything, at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we have to start ahead of time and then come back and cap off what we need for the Jolt restaurant. You don't know who's busy, who's hosting a party, who's doing a catering event. All these things change on a daily basis, 24-hour cycle.
So it's like this constant of consistency, but consistent adaptation.
Yep. Yeah, vigilance and being able to pivot to meet what the products that the customers need.
Now, I'd be remiss because you mentioned the twist, and I have had the pleasure and the good fortune to get a chance to see how the twist is made and even try my hand at that. Well, maybe just talk briefly because it's like an iconic product for Mancini's. What is the twist? How did that come to existence?
Interesting story. So it's something I always took for granted. In when I started the bakery, 90% of the product was the twist. So it's a single stranded braid, 1 pound loaf of bread. And the story, I found some notes in my great uncle's eating books, is basically when they started, they were kind of geared more towards restaurants than people, even at 100 loaves a day. And the traditional Italian loaf is football shaped. So you can imagine cutting slices in that bread, and whoever got the sandwich from the end of the loaf is getting a smaller sandwich than someone who got the bread from the middle of the loaf. That's kind of unacceptable on a restaurant standard. So this American solution was pans. Pans are very expensive. So when you're an immigrant just starting out, that's not an option. And so he came up with the single stranded braid, and that just gives it like a nice, kind of like a square profile. It's a slightly irregular, but width and height. And that became the signature of Mancini. So people come in and they order a twist. They don't order a loaf of Italian. And that's carried all the way through 100 years. And that's our marquee product.
That's awesome. That'd be great to, yes, it's so neat that you found like notes about it in their bakery lab book. That's really cool. So as we're talking through this, you established the products in this iconic company in Pittsburgh, but talk about a little bit of the times when you started to realize that you wanted to maintain all the tradition in history, but you saw the need to adapt operation. You started talking about the use of technology and others, but what were some of the first signs that you saw early on that was coming, that you were going to need to do that, even though it's a bakery and a lot of people go, oh, it's a bakery, but you saw that was coming. So what talk to us about that?
Yeah. I'm going to back up a little bit because I'm going to say my grandfather, one of the things he did for the bakery was, just some ingenuity and, not complex automation, but like he worked with a local welder to make machines to like help divide the bread. And so I part of this ingenuity comes from him, and things don't have to 100% be the same all the time. We can do things to make the job a little easier for bakers and a little faster so that we can work more efficiently. And I'll say probably like the biggest contribution I made to the bakery is making that transition to embracing technology and looking for machines that would expedite the process, right? Or replace people. We want to take, the skilled part of baking and concentrate the efforts of those bakers on the skilled part. So I mentioned before, like about scaling, like that is not a skill part. It's really important, but it's not the skill part. And that's the part that's hard on people's wrists. But let's find some equipment that works. Early equipment used a lot of oil, changed a lot of the consistency of the bread. We found, with time, technology caught up, and looking overseas where baking's taken more seriously in Europe, and finding equipment that used flour as lubrication instead of oil. And so, that was like first level for us, is to integrate machines that could help. So, that could scale the bread and present it to the baker in a way that they can roll it out and twist it. Looking, that's on the front side of baking, and on the back side, and this is like our first introduction to Catalyst, is we were looking to upgrade a flour bend system that used relays and resistors. And, in that time period, the skill set, what people were learning in trade schools, that was, maybe a chapter that they were learning, but it's not something they were learning in practice. And we all know those things like don't have feedback. And so we were looking to upgrade our control system for our flour system, put an HMI in, PCU. So, if there was a fault, it could tell you where the fault is. And so that was like our first level of kind of, what do we do to make what we do like more consistent? And we live on this constant 24-hour cycle. We live and die every day. Like every customer needs their bread tomorrow. And if something goes wrong today, how do we get by? And as you get bigger, that recovery gets harder and harder. And so you need to be mindful of preventive maintenance. You have to be mindful of downtime. And, when you're small, you can recover when you don't have your flour system. You can get bag flour. You can part flour from another bakery, which we've done countless times. But making your system more reliable is part of that solution. And so we got a grant to just get the engineering, the control side, just engineered. And that was a big help, made it a project that was feasible. And so we walked away with something that was better than what we had before, more reliable, gave us a lot of upside. And this is my advice for like small companies, looking forward when you think technology, because there's not enough people around to support the way you used to do things. As people retire, you have to put yourself in a position where when you pick up the phone and ask for help, that they can be there. You can direct them in the right place. If you can't do it in-house, you're going to save a lot of money and a lot of downtime. So ignoring technology is the wrong answer. Even though it might cost a little more, you're going to set yourself up for future success.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of really interesting points there. One, how really how incredible it is that, it's not only a tradition of the baking, which I think would have been assumed of just that's what gets passed down, but here also a tradition of ingenuity. I mean, your grandfather's already working to try to create new equipment, new machines that maybe didn't exist or weren't available yet here in the States. So, I mean, that's, a great tradition that you're clearly carrying on as well. And that other piece around, and it's the same story across manufacturing, no matter what sector you're in, of doing more with your existing workforce. Let them focus on the things they do best and where they really bring value, and let technology augment those other pieces. It's not about replacement, but augmentation. Let them do more with their time, be able to focus in on those key, as you said, value added areas. So that's all, that's all great stuff. And I think one interesting aside, I think this may help give people an idea of scale when you say, hey, we make 10,000 loaves of bread a day, what that really means. But talk about that flour system just briefly on, what you've got, these silos of flour, and what used to be, what was it, a hallway or a living room or so in the building there? Like, that's one of some of those are so cool. Like, how big are those silos and where is it in the original building?
And so, yep, Matt's, coming out of the bakery many times. And so, yeah, when I give a tour of the bakery, I tell people it's a little bit of time travel, because we walk into the first room that used to be the oven, and you can see the old peel that they used to put into the oven, 6 loaves at a time, 144 loaves. And, as the bakery grew, they just bought the house apartment building next door. And sometime in the 40s, they put a flour system in, or I'm sorry, the 60s, they put a bulk flour system in. So they basically they cut a hole in the ceiling of this, probably a 3-unit apartment building, and built four two-story flour bins. Each one holds 25 tons. We had four of them, and so up to 200,000 pounds of flour at a time. And when you walk into the bakery, it's deceiving. You basically see what the bakery used to be, but then if you walk around the whole bakery, it's surprising. It's maze-like because of the nature of our expansions. Eight expansions over 100 years, and the one we did in 2019 being the largest. But you get to see the sense of how things were handmade, hand done, how we work there, and then how we incorporate it. So now we get flour in a tanker truck. We only use unbleached, unbrominated flour. We naturally age it so it oxidizes and it becomes more consistent in the process of it. And it's just a really neat thing to see how, this the way we've grown in the way, even back then, that was an excessive amount of bread my grandfather was doing. But I think that's part of the lesson is whenever something happens, right? Everyone has budgets, and it's hard to imagine how you spend money and how you move forward. But every time, the way I looked at it is every time we had a breakdown and we needed to do something, it felt catastrophic. But you don't just replace it on a one-to-one level. You should replace it on a where you want to be in 5 years, maybe 10 years. And so, you're not going to rip this thing out. So let's build for the future. And I never had that discussion why they chose that system, but I look back and say like that had to be the thought process.
Yeah, clearly was saying if that was, 100 tons of flour, that's a lot of flour. How long does it, if you get a delivery, how long would it last? How much flour do you guys use on a daily basis typically?
Yeah, now we use, just under 10,000 pounds of flour a day.
Okay. So if you get one, you maybe about 20 days. But you said part of that you let it sit to oxidize. So you want to have a little bit always sitting there that's in that process.
Right. Yeah. So we believe in that naturally aging process. Yeah. A lot of bakeries use, they call it bleached flour. And so that's when they blow, basically chlorine gas through the flour to oxidize it and artificially age it. We like to keep things as natural as possible and, do that with an aging process. And so it's something that we've always held true to, and it's that capacity is built in, and we're lucky that we can do that.
That's excellent. Well, I want to start to look at a little bit further, like what some of the capabilities you're trying to access with your current digital transformation. A lot of it functions around traceability. What does that in the bakery world mean to you? How people understand, I think they get traceability in general, but what are some of the implications for you as a bakery as you're trying to grow?
Yeah. So the industry at large has become a lot more responsible. The food industry, the Food Safety Modernization Act, the third party certification, there's a myriad of agencies that certify you. But all of them have to do, basically, root back to food safety. And so traceability is this amazingly, simple concept that makes sense. We want to make our food safer, but it is an interconnected web of what ingredients came in, where your product went, and to know where all those things are. It's a huge effort. It takes a lot of people. And so we wanted to operate like in a very real way and go into the digital realm and collect as much data and process automatically as we can. So essentially, just if this bag of salt was found out to be adulterated in some way, you need to be able to figure out where that bread went, recall it from that customer, that grocery store, and so that no one gets hurt, or vice versa. You find some inclusion in a loaf of bread, we want to go back and see where that came from. And so, a lot of it's done manually, and there's a lot of errors. There's a lot of chance for an incentive for people to not record things or record things incorrectly. And so we wanted to do that in a way that was kind of fail safe and was traceable with a few clicks of a mouse, as opposed to paperwork that can be inconsistent and inaccurate. And that's was our driving goal as we want to grow, and we want to get into markets farther away from Pittsburgh and into larger customers that have more restrictions, and take our bread in that way. And we want to deliver not only a safe product but a quality product. And so we decided, if we're going to invest in this system, we wanted to do both. We wanted to take quality and traceability, and so that's the path we decided to take.
Okay. Yeah. And as you've been progressing down this path, maybe share a couple highlights, whether it's the process itself or how it's progressed, that were impactful for you to see how the digital transformation, how that process works, where the challenges are, and where you're seeing the successes.
Yeah. So I would say, initially everything sounds fantastic. That we'll be able to trace everything from here to here, and like here to here to here. And the reality is it's challenging and expensive. In us being a small to medium sized bakery, the price and the cost and some obstacles made that daunting. And so, one of the things Catalyst did for us, there's so many small projects, but there was a grant to explore a smart factory. And that put us in touch with Digital Foundry out in Kensington, and some really good, really smart people. They can apply concepts that large companies have put into effect, to amazing returns. And we want to take that and bring it into the bakery in a scalable way. And so they help lower the risk and let us explore what could really happen and what the return could be for us. And that put it in a framework where that equation worked, right? Where we saw we could grow, these investments could, pay dividends for us in the future.
And with the investments and the projects that are still underway that you've been working on for well over a year or 2 years almost now, that it's been a long journey. What are some of the other impactful elements or improvements that you see, maybe, or whether it's digitizing production data for easier viewing, be able to make more decisions, or maintenance aspects, or just being able to understand what is the status of all the various equipment across the shop through dashboarding. Which ones are you maybe already seeing impact from?
Yeah, it's amazing what you can see, and it's amazing, as well as you think your business. It's amazing what you learn, and so you can see where the things don't line up. So, like right now, we have RFID tags on every oven rack, and we can see where they're at in the flow process. So, being loaded with product when they go to the proof box, how long they're in the proof box, when do they go to the oven, where the oven, set point is, when do they go to the cooling room, how long before they get bagged, why were they in the cooling room for an extra hour, right? Why, when we have overproof product, why were they in the proof box for this long? Was the temperature in the proof box the right place? So we're able to go back and look at things and make corrections. So like if the proof box is malfunctioning, we can go and say, like, pinpoint that was the problem. Yeah. If it's a situation where someone needs coached on when to put something in the oven, we have the opportunity to do that. We know like when that happened, who was working there. These things have like real-time feedback, and they lead to tools. We haven't been able to, we have not developed the dashboards yet, but we're getting the data that's going to point that out. And so training's going to become faster. Every business right now has the challenge of staffing, especially in the manufacturing field. It's not the easiest place to work. But if we can bring people in, give them the tools to get better at the job faster and more reliably, then we're making it easier for them and we're getting better product out at the same time.
Yeah, excellent. It's all great. All about the right information or the right people allowing you to make your decisions faster and based on data. So that's very exciting. So I think as we wrap things up here, you're still in the process, but based on what you've learned so far, what recommendations would you have for other manufacturers, whether they're, other bakeries that are, kind of peer bakeries or other industries that are starting down this similar path to digitize and really go through a digital transformation process?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, just, don't ignore technology. I think get out there, reach out to people in your industry. And I've always, my wife kind of finds it annoying, but every time we go on vacation, I find a local bakery and I just knock on their door and ask for a tour and see what I can learn. It's amazing what you can learn and what you can see, and it doesn't have to be your own industry. Get into some trade groups and business groups to pull in, find out what you don't know. So much out there. Reach out to organizations, SBDC, your local university, Catalyst Connections. They're cool. Their mission is to help people like us and move you in that direction. And even if it's just exploratory, take those steps. So when it comes time that you are ready for it. Spend a lot of time. It's called value stream mapping, making sure you really understand what are the things that add value to your company, and try to take that all the way through as you go on your journey.
That's fantastic. I love that you're out on vacation, knocking on bakeries, asking for tours. Have you ever had somebody return the favor, randomly show up at your door and be like, "Hey, it's one good turn deserves another"?
Yeah, we whenever we can, we certainly do that. It's more of a pay forward thing. I've never really, despite invitations, had someone also come back, but it's typically more, you're helping this person and the other person helps you.
Yeah, no, that's definitely we liked, and that's what's I think so great about the region. Granted, I haven't been in a lot of others, but just from what other partners we've worked with in other areas, I think, Southwest Pennsylvania, really the amount of collaboration, be it, peer manufacturers or nonprofits, universities, everyone's, it's very much that rising tide lifts all boats mentality. And that's exactly what we're trying to embody here on the Smart Manufacturing podcast. So to close things up, Nick, I did see the tagline. Do you guys still use, like, maybe at your when you're out at Picklesburg or otherwise, you have big banners say "Our bread makes butter taste better"? Is that still out there?
That's yeah, it's I don't use it enough. It's a saying my grandfather always used, and it brings a smile on my face. So I do try to sneak it in there on certain things. I need to make a t-shirt for that.
Yeah, I mean, and I just feel like there's some sort of pseudo mythbusters where you can have people eat a piece of butter and then eat it on your bread and say, well, which one tastes better? And I think you can scientifically prove it.
That's right. We'll put together a scientific experiment.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dave. This was fantastic. We really appreciate your time joining us today on the Smart Factory podcast. And we look forward to seeing Mancini's more and more. I already get excited. All my kids are always excited when we see Mancini's or here I'm visiting, because they want to know where's the bread going to be.
Oh, thank you, Matt. It's been a huge help to us.
Oh, thank you much.
That's all for today's episode of the Smart Factory podcast. Thanks so much for listening. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone in your network who's navigating the future of manufacturing. We'll see you next time. And before you go, a final word from our sponsors.
As a manufacturer, you know energy and operating costs add up fast. But what if a grant could help you modernize your plant and save money? Reducing industrial sector emissions in Pennsylvania, RISE PA offers grants to manufacturers with fewer than 500 employees. Eligible projects can receive up to $500,000 to install more efficient equipment that cuts emissions and lowers utility bills. Modernize your plant, reduce costs, and strengthen PA's manufacturing future. Learn more and see if you qualify at risepa.org.
Execution does not stop at your four walls. Even strong operations can fall behind if the supply chain is not keeping pace. KDL Logistics works with manufacturers to close that gap. From freight optimization and carrier management to real-time visibility and cost control, they help keep product moving without disruption. Learn more at kdllogistics.com.